Hi, it is with great pleasure that we introduce our distinguished guest, Mr. Shmuel Heiken, who stands as a visionary leader in the field of AI product innovation, continuously pushing the envelope to create next generation AI solutions that shape the future of technology and business. As we delve into the realm of AI and its impact on various sectors, I'd like to focus our attention on the legal industry today. So, considering the rapid advancements in AI technology and its growing adoption in legal practices, there's much to explore regarding its implications, challenges, and opportunities. So, with that in mind, let's delve into some key questions about the current state and future trajectory of AI in the legal sector. So, my first question to you is just generally, can you just briefly describe the current state of AI adoption in the legal sector?
Yeah, so this is a great question because there isn't one correct answer for it, right? So if you have, there's a lot of products that are being developed to do different things. Um, that within the AI, like we've seen products that scan your documents, that create documents for you, and scan customers' information. There's still a hesitation in trusting AI with your data because your data is not or doesn't belong to you, belongs to customers, and you have uh, a responsibility on your customers' data to make sure that it is not being used for training software or that kind of thing. So we're still kind of in a phase that we've been for a while where we don't fully trust it, and we're trying to work out what parts of it we can use um, to make our jobs more efficient. So what we're starting to see are people building apps that are using AI somewhat in order to be able to do things as opposed to automating entire processes in AI. So as AI gets better, obviously that will become things will become more baked into apps. But we're not really seeing AI overtake or AI become a lawyer or AI do that kind of thing. We're going to start to see AI help our attorneys do things that they need to do in their everyday job.
So you spoke right now about how it improves efficiency, but can you dive more into how specifically AI has impacted the efficiency and accuracy of the legal research and case analysis?
So, as an attorney, I'm not an attorney. I work with a lot of attorneys. We see our attorneys spending hours and hours reviewing case files, understanding. I work at a law firm now. We look at a lot of medical records, trying to understand uh, who somebody is based on their on what information we have. Um, Using AI, there are tools that I've seen that can take those medical records and give you a very accurate understanding of who the person is, which information is relevant to you. Instead of having to spend 6, 7 hours reading through case files, highlights can be produced. Uh, Chronology statements can be outputted, which tell you, oh, these are really the important pieces of information that you need to pull out of these documents. Um, Again, yes, there are tools. I've seen demo of them. The hesitation that we still have, and at the law firm that I work at, we have this concern, which is how do you trust your law degree? You went to school for 7 or 8 years to get a degree in law, and are you going to trust some AI to pull out and make sure it's not missing anything, misunderstanding something? But in a perfect setting, we have AI that can really summarize and help us get information out of long, long documents in a very quick format, which allows more time in the day for our attorneys to do other things. As well, when an attorney is writing an argument or attorney is drafting a document, if we could use our AI tools to output content and help us with those document generations, um, we're speeding up processes that the attorneys are spending hours and hours on and just making them more efficient and much quicker.
So, as you were talking about, basically what I understood from this is you're saying that it won't completely replace the attorneys, right? Um, so I would think that there would be some challenges that you would encounter, like integrating AI into legal practices. So, can you discuss more about that? Just because I know you can't replace the attorney, but I know there might be even some sort of a bias even after you integrate it, correct?
No, absolutely. So AI is also it's always changing. The one thing that I've encountered personally using AI, not as an attorney, is hallucinations. Right, part of artificial intelligence is supplementing what we don't know with what we know to produce information. So AI will often make assumptions, um, which is technically, I mean, the opposite of what attorneys do. A lot of people when you're working in law, you cannot stand up and assume things. You actually have to have details of this. I know there's a few case studies that were done where attorneys had used ChatGPT for case studies and brought precedent, which actually didn't exist. So the ChatGPT model just outputted a non-existent case that fit the guidelines of what they were trying to prove. If this is the case that happens, an attorney can be disbarred, and I think there was a consequence for that attorney. I forget the exact details, but you're creating a situation where artificial intelligence, which you really don't have control of how it's weighted, what information, how accurate it's going to be, what its sources are going to make decisions and make outcomes, which is kind of very scary. I'm not saying we're never going to get there, but that is an absolute concern that any attorney and anyone in the IT field has to have right now before relying on AI.
Yeah, that was my next question to you, actually. My next question was, how do you think AI will affect the roles and job security of lawyers and paralegals in the future? And what I got from that is that if it's not implemented, well, not implemented, but not used correctly, it can be detrimental to the lawyer's job, right?
Yeah, so I'll back it up and let's discuss each thing. So the challenges are the challenge obviously when you implement this to make sure that everything is accurate. And I'll talk about I'm a tech professional in the legal world, so I have my legal experience is all based on working on the tech side of at law firms. And the one thing I can say on the tech side is I don't believe that ChatGPT is going to replace a very good developer. I worked with a guy who's an insane developer, and yes, some of the work that he could have spent 2-3 hours, and I'll be like, hey, um, I can build that with 3 ChatGPT prompts. I've got exactly what you took a week to build, and he looks at it and then he points out, oh, you missed this, or in the following situation, you're not following best practice. So a experienced developer who's actually felt the pain and understands stuff is not going to be replaced. But in this example, my friend John could have gone and really sped up a week's worth of work by having a good structure. So there is still that risk that if you just deploy code blindly, you're going to really be building garbage in your system, and you're going to be creating more and more issues down the road. The same in the legal sense if you keep relying on it. But it does mean that we could use AI intelligently. The people who are very good attorneys will find ways to use AI to make their job more efficient. The people who are very good case managers will work out, hey, this is a very repetitive task. Can I just dump some of this into AI and ask it to summarize or extract all the medicine codes or whatever the case is? And there are use cases where you can start to learn where you can trust AI and where you can't, and become more efficient in your job.
So after we establish that where it can be used and where it cannot be used, what are some ethical considerations that like law firms should address when implementing AI technologies?
So it's interesting. A few months ago, I was working on a project where we were trying to build an intake bot. So the goal was an intake agent would, instead of having to call the law firm or text the law firm, we could have an AI bot like ChatGPT respond to you, ask you some qualifying questions, and based on them say, Vani, hey, you seem like a perfect candidate for this case. This is how it works. Here's a assigned retainer. And then we came to an ethical concern, which is in some states, for example, it is illegal for a non-attorney to accept a case, which means that ChatGPT is not an attorney, cannot accept a case. The reverse is also opposite, which is, can ChatGPT reject a case? ChatGPT can say, oh, Vani, you actually have no case. Now all of a sudden you have a huge problem, which is you're going to go and say, oh, I didn't have a case and I was told by such and such law firm, but you really weren't told by such law firm. You were told by a bot that could have been hallucinating or could have been programmed incorrectly that day something was down or something like that. In such a case, there'd be a concern where my law firm used your bot and now a person was recommended against it. So these are kinds of things that currently exist as issues. Obviously, as ChatGPT and OpenAI and all these different platforms become better at what they do, I think the attorneys that are very advanced will stand in front of of the boards and say, okay, these are the changes that are going to need to be made to incorporate technology. We've seen it in the past. I mean, I work at a social security law firm. 10 years ago, I don't believe you could retain a customer via DocuSign. Now, I think 99% of all our customers are retained via DocuSign. So things need to change, right? It was illegal to get a signature electronically 10 years ago in this particular case. Attorney stood up and said, hey, this is something that has to change, so we have to change the law. And we'll start to see that when it comes to AI as well.
So, considering all these changes and all these things that we have to keep in mind, how can law firms prepare their staff for the shift towards a more technologically advanced practices? Because it's bound to happen. It's inevitable to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, ChatGPT is the most common one. Everybody knows, right?
Right.
But what people don't realize is when you type in the ChatGPT window, you're essentially, in some way, shape, form, giving your information to ChatGPT, and they could train the model on that. They could use stuff out. And I had an attorney ask me and say, Shmuel, what if I put in a customer's file information in there and their medical records, and then 6 months later, when they do the retraining, another person asks a question, is there precedent for the specific case? And by some chance, ChatGPT produces data that it's now trained that I put into the system and says, yes, there was once a client that worked for this and this law firm who retained this and this law firm, and she had the following medical conditions. That is a direct, me allowing my client's information to be used in the public like that would be direct breach and could result in disbarment. So how do you prevent that? You prevent that by educating your workspace. Like we have our Microsoft system. Microsoft system has Copilot built in. So our arrangement, and we know it, what I type in Copilot when I search it is restricted and will not be used to train. So it's kind of creating awareness of what you can and can't do, and to help people understand what's going to be safe uses of AI. Where can I dump information in? Could I use it to help me code? Yes. Could I use it to help me write a letter? Well, does that letter contain the customer's social security number? Do you want them added to a database with the customer's social security numbers? That's already now past the line. So I think firms that want to be advanced and be leaders in this area, which is really going to shape the speed at which they're able to operate, are going to need to be very focused on training and educating the end users and employees on what it is that they can and can't do and how they can practice safely, allowing them to come back and close the cycle and say, oh, if AI could do this, it would be even better and stuff like that.
So that's interesting, actually. The example you used for like the medical records one, I have some knowledge on like medical like stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
know that directly, if by chance ChatGPT were to reproduce that, that would be a violation of HIPAA.
Correct.
In like
Yeah.
the medical field. And you know more in like the legal field. I'm sure it's a violation there as well.
Yeah.
So can you share like more examples of how like AI like being used in like litigation or like contract management or even like playing an access to like justice initiatives? Basically like just on the more legal side.
So when you say to share issues or how it could be
Just
used?
just because I know like both. I feel because we've been talking more generally, just like both of like how issues and like how it can be used and how we can properly implement it despite those issues.
Yeah.
That's
So I think that obviously, I mean, there's the personal thing where somebody has to understand that there are limitations, and obviously AI hallucinates, and also that I think there is a very big emphasis, especially, I mean, if you're an experienced attorney and you know that your years of school are at stake if you just dump in information in somewhere where it's not supposed to be, then I think that the research that you're doing is asking companies, hey, I'm going to give you my data. Where is it going? What are you doing with it? Are you using it to train the model? An interesting point to note is obviously the more data, the better, right? So when you look at big law firms, like house brands, like a Morgan & Morgan is a very big law firm. They receive I don't know the number, but I would assume that they have hundreds of thousands of cases in their inventory. Um, as opposed to a small attorney, if someone who's just starting as an attorney only has a handful of cases, their data is not very valuable. So they really couldn't, they really don't have like similar cases, information, letters that were produced. So the question is, if you could dip into a pool with firms that have hundreds of thousands of records, then do you have that ability to produce better quality AI, all of that kind of thing? But on the flip side, now you have the problem where you're mixing in data. So there's a sanitization that can happen where you're producing data that has been sanitized first. There are services that we've looked at which will say, okay, no problem, we'll sanitize that. So the actual data is correct, but there'll never be PII information, and then you'll never cross into a HIPAA issue or an information where someone's personal information will ever come out because that information has been sanitized previously. So things like this could help us allow it if firms can make agreements between customers and their data to say, hey, together we could achieve more. If we could pull our data together, again in a sanitized format, then you have that ability to produce more models with more data. We've looked at a lot about, and I think a lot of people have looked into, what is the value of a case, and what is the value of a case, or how much money, or is this going to be a successful case? If you want to go, I have a lot of experience in PI, so PI is a lot of how valuable is the case, how much money are we going to make from it, right? So
Right.
if you look at that, a firm like Morgan & Morgan has a tremendous amount of data that they can tie to case value and say, okay, in the following cases, when there is the following injuries, with using State Farm as your insurance, or if you have Progressive insurance, this is what's a likely outcome. You can only produce that kind of information if you have a lot of data. The more data you have, the better your outputs and your outcomes are going to become. So in the case where you want to produce, for example, outcome based, you need a lot of data. So we'll see the firms that have the most data really have a leg up in this like AI race. And the question is, how can firms who are smaller law firms, don't have as much data, how can they pull their data together, or tap into these data systems to be able to produce information that they want? So that's kind of going to be something that's going to shape the future of AI, like how we see it, what can be done. I think a lot of it's going to be who has the right vision and who has the right data is going to really control the outcome of where AI goes today.
So going on from that, you talked about like what's going to shape the future of AI. So do you personally see any like new big trends in AI that you see coming that is you believe that is going to further influence legal practices?
So, the two things that I think that are coming up over and over again are analyzing documents. So all law firms are just doing a ton of work with document creation, document classification, document generation. At the firm I work in, we receive thousands and thousands of pieces of mail per day. And it is a huge operation to sort that mail, make sure that mail gets to the right people, make sure that mail is classified correctly. The government is sending denial forms, they're sending different things. So if you could use, like, I mean, there's software, we have something running right now with a third party that scans that mail and tries to understand what is this piece of mail, um, and and uh, and takes that piece of mail and puts it into the right place. So we're looking to see what ideas could we have that will speed up everyday processes and allow attorneys to do real attorney stuff. Sorting mail, looking through documents, trying to understand what it is not really a good use of your time. If something else could do that automatically, that's obviously a great use of AI. So we're going to see a lot of trends around documents. What I've seen, maybe it's just a bias towards what the types of law that I've been involved in, but I've seen a lot of law firms that are doing that medical records weigh in heavily. I'm sure within all of law, medical records are pretty important. Maybe not when it comes to like mergers and acquisitions or that kind of stuff, but when it comes to the type of law that I've seen, medical records are very important. And sifting through a lot of medical records to find the right amount of information is going to be super important. So for us, uh, accessing medical records and understanding what the medical records actually are is going to be something that we see. And I'm being targeted. Maybe it's because I search these things, but I'm seeing a lot of emails come in and say, hey, we can help you understand your medical records, tie them to industry standard codes, produce that kind of stuff. So I see those kind of things really shaping what we'll see in AI across the legal space for the next little bit.
That's great. That's actually interesting, the medical record stuff. Um, so lastly, my last question to you is, what advice would you give law students or young lawyers preparing for a future where AI is prevalent in legal systems?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, well, whether it's prevalent or not, is that we're coming through an age where tools are shifting. I have a friend at another law firm who mentioned he saw a firm spending excessive amounts of money on a technology that he believes in 6 months will be outdated. So it's something to understand that you're in school now. Technology is moving at a faster pace than it's ever moved, ever before in our history. So embrace what you see and understand that maybe it's ChatGPT today that can help you write an essay and can format it and whatever the case is. But understand what tools exist out there and use them to make you better. I don't think they can replace you. I mean, law school is still a real thing. I don't think we're getting rid of attorneys, and we still need people to fight to change and change advocacy and stuff like that. But we need to be able to understand what tools are out there and how we can best use them to make our jobs and our life more efficient. So if we can get on and say, okay, ChatGPT is not the tool, but I know that there are case law and case there are tools that are analyzing case history and stuff and allowing you to really type things in that can find you information in a better way. It's not just with AI, it's with technology, right? Use the technology at hand um, to make you more successful. Be aware of it. And for example, when it comes to you're not allowed to put your customers' data inside of ChatGPT, for example. But that doesn't mean I can write out a story that isn't my customer and have it break down information for me without putting in anything that's personal or private about that customer into the database. So knowing what you can, especially, I mean, an attorney who's been to school knows better than me what they can and can't share. So they'd be able to share information in the tools, even if the tool is not just simple copy and paste and give me the answer. Go and use the tools that exist and try and make your life easier and your job easier.
So yeah, what I understood from this is that moving forward, it's essential for legal practitioners and stakeholders to remain like vigilant and adaptable and like innovative in like harnessing the power of AI to address complex legal challenges and to use the right tools at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Um,
One thing I just want to add, and I don't know if it's on script or what, but so I work with Vikram at a previous job. I know Vikram is working on this accounting software as well. It's not relevant directly to the area the law firm I work for practices in, but I do think it's worth mentioning that accounting in legal is a space that there is a lot of room for AI to really help. I worked in legal tech, not for a firm, for many years, like for different firms in consulting capacity, and had a lot of requests coming along the financial side. And we saw things that AI could easily do, which is kind of like financial approval processes that AI can understand. Is someone trying to circumvent it by classifying time a specific way without having to read each line? Does it look like Shmuel is logging time, but he's out of research time, so he's using a discovery category to log his time because he knows that's going to be approved. So to try and understand when things mismatch is really going to help law firms protect their money and what they pay out. And then the other aspect that is also, I mean, approval processes, like I mentioned. I worked at law firms with complex approval processes, and let's say an attorney wants to expense a case cost. There's different approval processes. Was it necessary to the case? For example, if you expense $200 worth of pizza on a PI case, you'd have to have a very good reason in your description why that would be applicable to the case. And that's something that AI could flag. This looks like an outlier. That's not a real case. But $75 for gas mileage plus parking, a plane ticket, retaining an expert, those are things that an AI could analyze and say, yes, these make sense based on the case type and the insurances or whatever the case is. These look like case types that should be approved. So that's something to think about, is how we could use AI to understand time logged, expenses logged, on a case from an accounting point of view and really make things more efficient.
Right. Yeah, that was definitely needed, yeah. So it definitely, especially with the law accounting, it definitely can create a way more efficient system.
Hmm.
And it's clear that it's not just a tool, but rather like almost like a completely new transformative system for reshaping this entire practice and system of law, if we're talking specifically in law. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us and like joining me and telling me about all these advancements and sharing your knowledge because I know you're very insightful in these things. But thank you so much for joining today. And that was
Of
it.
course.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much and best of luck.
Thank you. Bye.